All right, here we are. I'm live today. It's Whitney Emanuel with Strategic Visionaries, and I have special guest Mary Schmid today with me. Thank you for joining me, Mary.
You're welcome, Whitney. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, likewise. So nobody's here yet, but I like to get started just because, people can always come back and see the replay and join as they see that we're live.
Exactly.
So I wanted to just first introduce you and have you tell us a little bit about yourself and then the work that you do, because a lot of people know what I do, financial planning and, really creating money strategies for people to make their lives better and more fulfilling. And then, Sarah says hello. She says hello, Whitney and Mary. Hi, Sarah. So what I'd like for you to do is just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then I'll explain to our audience, why I wanted you to join me today.
Awesome. So yeah, my name is Mary Schmid, and I work as a speaker, author, and executive coach. And part of the work that I do is really helping people understand their relationship with money and why that is important so that they can have better conversations around money. So recently, in the last probably 3 or 4 years, I particularly work with the financial services community, professional financial advisors, helping them understand the backdrop and the emotional connection that people have with money so that they can lead better conversations with their clients and really get to the heart of the matter and work with them in a collaborative partnership way.
Yep. Awesome. And it is all about partnership in order to create any type of action.
Correct.
For anybody, right? And I know we've talked about that a lot, collaboration versus just telling someone what to do. So
that's what works, is when you and your clients are in partnership and you can be open and honest and really make progress about what's important.
Yeah. Definitely. And by the way, I just noticed that somebody joined live. However, if you join live, please just pipe into the comments and say hello. And please feel free to ask any questions that come up as Mary and I are having this discussion. So the reason I wanted Mary to join us today is because we've been friends for several years now. And I've always really enjoyed what Mary does because she really goes deeper than just money. And it's the same thing that I tell my clients. It's not money that's important. It's about money and what it can do for you. And so the better your relationship with money, the more fulfilling of a life you'll have, because you can use money as a tool rather than being like a slave to money and your money habits that make you in fear rather than abundance. So I really like to talk to people about, what drives them, what's important to them. That's the first conversation, because again, money comes second. First is your why. And so Mary's business really pairs and partners well with mine, because I do a lot more than just money management. It's about relationship building, partnership, creating a plan, activating people to make change in their lives that's sustainable and feels good. So that's why we're here. And we're planning to talk about specifically today our money blocks, is what we're calling them. And so these I would describe as, in my profession, when I speak with clients or prospective clients, are what are behaviors in your life that are preventing you from succeeding financially, really is what it comes down to, whether that's budgeting, whether that's saving enough for retirement, whether that's trusting an investment advisor to manage your money, maybe you have fear around that. So there are a lot of things that can come up, but that's what we were planning to discuss today. Yeah. So why don't we just dive right in? So the first thing that we're going to discuss are what are some typical money blocks that people have, and what are things that I encounter that my clients will run into a wall when we're working together. So the first one that I see a lot, regardless of the amount of income that somebody has, is overspending. And so I'm actually reading right now a book, The Millionaire Next Door. It's very good. And it talks about, are you an underaccumulator or overaccumulator of wealth? And your wealth has nothing to do with the amount of your income. It has to do with your saving strategies. So in fact, some of the wealthiest people Middle, and I'd say not the top 1%. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about people who have worked hard to save money and become millionaires, self-made, non-inherited money. And this is most millionaires actually did not inherit the money. And so how did they do that? They saved at least 15% of their income. However, a lot of people don't do that. And so overspending is one very, very common block that I see people. So, and that's, having a lack of a budget and sticking to the budget. Maybe they have a budget and they know what they're spending, but they don't know how to change their behavior that they have. So that's a very common one. That kind of goes along with not tracking your spending. Again, not having a budget, not having a plan with your spending. And that oftentimes then gets people into debt. And again, has nothing to do with your income. You could have a very high income and still have way more debt than what would be advisable. So, and I work with people a lot on their budget and debt strategies because there's the foundation of every plan is your budget and your debt management. If you can get those in line, you can save as much as you want. So, but it comes down to saving, but you have to get through the budget first. Just kind of get through the water, the murky waters of budgeting. No one likes it. No one really likes it. But if you have, I always tell people, if you have structure is freedom. And it really allows people to empower themselves. So those are some of the common blocks that I encounter right at the beginning. We could talk about maybe further along in the planning process with investing and such, but I think that would be a great place to start. So Mary, why don't you talk to us about, where these may come from and just what you've learned about these particular behaviors?
Yeah. So we're going to have the money talk, and when we have the money talk, people just like freeze and fear, anxiety, and so I want to set the stage and say, we all have patterns around money based on our experience. Those patterns don't serve us, they become blocks. And so when they become blocks, you see behaviors. And so today we're going to dig a little bit deeper and say, so what's the driver of those blocks? And it's your emotions around money.
Yep.
So setting the stage, I want you to be just open and just notice what may be true for you. No judgment, no criticism, but rather a feeling of curiosity like, that might be true for me. So just notice and be curious. So when I bring it up, I say, the things that you think about money, really, it comes from a 7-year-old running your money show.
It's funny because Zuri is 7.
People will say, oh my gosh, no, I'm not 7. I'm 70, 27, 37, 47. But the truth of the matter is that when we don't understand the emotions underlying money, really a 7-year-old is running our show. And this is why, as we're growing up and we hear things like the Tooth Fairy and Santa Claus and all these things, we just take these things and like a sponge, we store them in our memory. And we don't really have the opportunity to check them out or not check them out because we just do what everybody tells us.
Yeah.
However, with the Tooth Fairy or the Santa Claus or things that we believed as children, as we get older, we learn some other things that, that might not be true.
Sure.
So we have a way of testing it out and finding out what is really fact. Money is we don't talk about money, generally speaking, or the emotions behind money that are driving your decisions. And so unnoticed, when you get into money situations, it's a 7-year-old that may be running your money show. The good news is once you're aware of what these are, then you bring them to light and simply say, well, I noticed this pattern. So what is it that I can do about that? People like you coming and say, okay, so I get this. So let's figure out a way that we can make it work for you.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say I had a client who, I won't mention any names, but she had inherited money, and she had money in a trust, and her parents had never taught her anything about money, and she felt so ashamed because she didn't know anything, and she felt like she should. And I mean, she's past retirement age, but like I said, she is not married. She's divorced. She has children, but she's like I really want to start learning. And she has her money, managed in a trust, but she was so, I think, just fear and shame ridden about money because she felt, well, I should know this. It's something
Yeah.
that I should know. And so then she was, for the longest, is avoidant of the gentleman who manages the trust because she doesn't want to feel stupid. Right. So that's just an example. Like she actually hired me just purely for coaching, to really know how to have conversations, build her confidence, understand her spending, understand her budget, got her set up on Mint, just so that she could identify where she's at.
Yeah.
Identifying. So that's, I could totally see. I don't know her 7-year-old self story, but I can only imagine it must be like, you should know that, kind of this type of behavior towards her, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and my story is, here I am. I am an executive running a $300 million budget. I've got my MBA. I know money mechanics. I know beyond the checking out. I know all this. And one day I woke up and I said, well, I know this, but there's something that's gnawing at me, something that I don't know that's driving me to feel doubtful or insecure or really taking an active role in my money. And what I discovered was there's a whole piece that's the practical side, but underlying that are the emotions. And what we've identified over the work that I've done and the work that I continue to do, quite honestly, with people, is to look at the patterns that have been ingrained and that we have come to believe. So let me pull the curtain aside and talk about the patterns. The patterns really are what I call archetypes. We all have had different experiences, different lives. We've grown up knowing and have different ideas about money, but they fall into sort of specific patterns. And now we have more than one pattern, but when we know our pattern, we can really begin to say, oh, that's what's going on. So how can I work with it?
Yeah.
The first pattern is what we call the accumulator. The accumulator thinks a penny saved is a penny earned. They work hard. They value themselves on how much they save and how responsible they are. Yeah. And no matter how much they've saved or earned, it feels like it's not enough. There's more. There's more. There's more. So it's not. So I don't want people. I don't want us to judge it. Just notice that, like your millionaire next door. These are people who live very frugally, and they accumulated their wealth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whole thing of this whole idea that money provides safety and security.
Totally.
And I have to have it. I have to know where it is. I have to see it. I have to check it just to reassure myself that it's there.
Yep. And, June commented, she says yes to patterns. So, and I think, I know June personally, I know she's done a lot of work just on identifying patterns in her life. So I can imagine how she would feel, oh, well, that totally applies to my money patterns. Right. Money's no exception.
Right. And see, the thing is about this work, when you sort of identify the patterns, you're going to find that it's not just about money, that it's really sort of the driving beliefs and patterns to our whole life. And so, for example, an accumulator is not one who's going to take risks, no matter no matter what they do. They're really happy and safe in the status quo. And the side that the downfall of that is they may be missing out on opportunities.
Sure, it may not be an entrepreneurial type, for example.
Right, or they may miss out on a job promotion because I have where I am. They may miss out on
security, stability is really important to them. Those would be their core values. That's the exercise that I, do with people. Yeah. June says, "That's me, no risk."
So, and I love what you said. We're not judging it. We're just noticing it.
Yep.
Just noticing it.
Yep. I am not an accumulator, even though I'm a financial advisor. Ironically, it's not my archetype.
Not your first one. No, it's not. No. The thing is, you can identify a couple, 2 or 3, and the key is to notice what they are, and so we can help bridge the gap and align them to play together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because awesome. Yeah.
What's the next one?
Second archetype is the ruler, and what the ruler really believes, and at the core is hard work pays off.
Yeah.
They're ambitious. They're driven. A plan, they're going to get there no matter what. Nothing's going to stop them. And on the outside, they look like they're really pretty successful and they've got their act together. But on the inside, they measure their worth by their bank account. And they worry that there's never going to be enough. So what do? They work harder. They work harder. They harder.
Yeah.
They're ambitious. They work hard. And in all of that, they may be missing opportunities for things that they enjoy.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
can see that. So we've talked about this. That's one of my stronger ones.
Mm-hmm. It's one of them that sort of, and when the things, when we align them, it really has helped you because you know a plan, you know how to get there, and you're relentless with your pursuits.
Right.
You don't do it at the sacrifice of your life and relationships. And
I've had to learn that, though. I had to learn that, right?
That's the point, Whitney. It's very learnable.
Yeah, that's true.
For the ruler, work can dominate everything. And there's little left to enjoy. Friends, family, activities, leisure.
True.
Yeah, work becomes the driving force. Little time for themselves or little time for others. They're not also particularly flexible or adaptable. If something goes wrong, rather than saying, well, what went wrong here? They simply say, well, we'll just work harder. We'll work harder. We'll work harder. The third archetype is the maverick. And the maverick says, I'm going to do it my way. They're not afraid of risks. They're not afraid of taking challenges, but they're not particularly open to listening to the advice of other people because their way really is the best way. They make decisions. And if it doesn't work out, then they simply say, well, that wasn't such a good deal. I'll just make another decision. So they rarely take the time to go back and simply say, I made a decision about my money, but I didn't know the details, and I just made this decision thinking I've got 5 oranges and I'll sell them at 5 cents. Well, the market dropped and I'll sell them at 2 cents. Oh, well, we'll just keep going on and figure it out. So they take risks, but the risks drives it. The excitement of the chase, the excitement of the risk drives them.
Well, and maybe it sounds like would this person maybe not want to take responsibility and do an inventory of their decisions?
When we work with them, we help them to do that. We simply say, so you made this, and where did it lead to, and what else, and what was the impact of you? What was the impact?
Yeah, because it makes me think of there's this behavioral bias in finance. It's overconfidence. So it's like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and it works for me. And then they tend to overlook the downside of those decisions. And so, like you said, to bring in a balance, yes, you want to buy Tesla stock and do 100% of your portfolio in it. That would be good in March, right? It's recovered quite well. However, now all your money's in Tesla stock. So you could easily see a significant downturn because all your money's in one company. So that would be someone who's...
So let's take a look at what else might be options.
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing too that I think is really important in the financial planning process that I do with clients. It's not all or nothing. It's make a combination of choices, and also let's collaborate on what you feel most comfortable with. So you don't want to get rid of like all your Apple stock or all your Disney stock or whatever it is. Maybe you inherited it, maybe you bought it years ago. But the idea is, let's just sell some of it and try something new without feeling like you have to commit to a totally new makeover.
And that's where you bring in that perspective on simply saying, so that's one option to look at that. Where else can we look? What else might it look like?
Yeah,
the objective piece of it to help connect this impulse that I have just to go big or go home to look at the impact of what that means.
Yeah.
Maverick is my top archetype, and what I've learned from that is, I'm not afraid to take risk and reward, but I also need to read the details and really read the details and say, so is this just something that feels good in the moment, or is it something that really will work? And to take advice of the people that I work with, the people that help me, because that's the other piece about the Maverick. They're not terribly willing to take advice. And so how do we create in our relationship that piece of it? Because they don't like to be told what to do. They know best.
Okay, got it. Got it. Yep, I know a couple Mavericks. It's
interesting. And luckily, we have more than one archetype, and they play with each other.
Exactly. Yeah. I'd be curious I'm sure you'll get into that, but it's just, we could talk about examples with that, but that would be great.
Yeah. And so we have the next archetype is a celebrity, and they just love to be in the limelight. They are charismatic. They're personable. They are always dressed to the T. They look like they have it all together. They are very standout. They are the image of success. What they're really thinking in the inside is, I will project an image of success because I don't want people to find out what's really in my bank account. I don't want people to think or challenge or judge me because I'm not the image. And the image protects them from other people getting close to really understand what's going on. They have a hard time being vulnerable and dropping the guard because they don't want to be judged.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that's one that I'm ruler and celebrity. Those are, I think, my two strongest ones. And it's interesting that you say that because sometimes you don't want to just stop and look at where you're at with that type.
Yeah. And be honest and simply say, well, this is where I'm at. How are things going? Celebrity is one of mine too. And so when we go to networking meetings or I meet people like, oh, things are great. But on the inside, no, they weren't. I didn't know about this and I worried about that. I don't want to drop my guard and let them in for fear that they're going to judge me.
Yeah,
so
that's
interesting. About this sort of exterior persona. Because we don't let people in. It's too scary.
Yeah, definitely. I could see that for sure. And I think too, even to take it further, is maybe you don't even realize. I think a lot of people don't realize that they're doing this. Like they even will maybe lie to themselves and say everything is all good, even though of course that's just not possible in life, right? But I think you don't even take the time to look at your own situation to really be honest with yourself. And if you can't be honest with yourself, then you can't be honest with others, right?
Yeah, and because we don't talk about some of these patterns that are showing up, we just run on autopilot when we say to ourselves, "That's just the way that I am." But I'm here to challenge. When we learn about the patterns, it doesn't have to be that's just the way that I am, but we can learn to change and grow and navigate them in a different way. The next archetype is the alchemist. And they put principle and cause above all. They are a visionary. So I picture them as a hot air balloon looking down on the world and simply saying there is so much work and so much good things that we can do. We can do this, we can do this, we can do this. And so they really do see things and possibilities that other people don't see. But where they run into problem is that they constantly are hopping from idea to idea to idea and never sticking with one long enough to see it through. And quite honestly, these kinds of folks have, I call it a love-hate relationship with money. You see all these problems, and if we had the money, we could do so much more. And so seeing money as a source of possibility, money is a source of closed doors because we don't have the money.
Yeah.
So a lot of these people you'll find sort of like always wondering, like, where is their next paycheck coming from and what am I going to do? And they worry a lot about money. Because they hate it, they have a love-hate relationship. We know that money is a tool, but I hate that it is because I could do so much more good if I had more.
Yeah. Kind of like a scarcity mindset.
Yeah. On one hand, and I think that's one of your archetypes too, Whitney, is the alchemist. You see possibilities, you see solutions, you see things that other people don't see. The name of the company, visionary.
Yeah, it's true.
So you have the vision, but you've also used your other archetypes to put it into play.
Right. And also it's like looking at the budget and thinking, shoot, I can't do that yet.
Yeah, you have this great idea and the ruler comes in and simply said, okay, let's look at your budget. It's a great idea. Is it now or later? Well, it might be later, it might be now, but you make a decision.
Yes.
It's really the archetypes underneath that are driving that decision.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I could totally see that.
And that's the whole goal of when we do this work is that people really get aligned with the conflicts that they feel over money. Because when we feel conflicts over money, we don't talk about it.
It's true. We don't talk about it.
I don't really. And the nurturer simply says, I will help you. I will help you. I will help you. I will help you. I sort of say the nurturer is them or not. one hand, they're incredibly generous. They're incredibly giving. They like to take care of people, but they also like to solve problems for people, not with people.
Oh.
When they say, well, this is a problem, here's what we need to do, and people don't follow through, they get a little snarky, offended, or victimy is the word that I'll use. And so the challenge for the nurturer is simply say, how can I empower people rather than solve the problem for them? How can I solve
Oh, okay. So, this is interesting. It's probably, I can imagine this person, because they can be subject maybe to codependent behavior, right? And also they are maybe the family member that always lends to their family, and then they expect their family then to do the thing with the money that their family said that they would do, and then their family doesn't do it, and then they get angry at them for wasting the money that they lent, even though they didn't truly maybe recognize the patterns of
right. And the next time the family comes around to say, can I borrow some more money? What do? They give it away. They give it away because I think that's going to help them solve the problem, rather than simply saying, so let's talk about what's going on and how I can help you to help yourself.
Yeah.
How can I help you to help yourself? It's magic. It's absolutely magic, because they tend to give away a lot of their money, whether they give away free services, whether it's their family members or charity. And so if their bank account is empty, it's not because they don't know money, they give it away out of the goodness of their heart. So boundaries is a real issue. They need to learn how to set boundaries effectively that works for them. And that's the solution. So rather than enabling people, we say, how can I help you? Nurture is one of mine. And I learned that lesson early on, that my job as an executive coach, my job as a trainer, my job as a mentor is not to tell you how to solve your problems, but rather to ask the kinds of questions so we can unearth and figure out at the bottom of this so we can make better decisions.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Asking the right questions, if you can master that as this type, it would really empower it would really make it more effective. Your strengths.
Yeah, absolutely. It's this whole internal shift saying that I'm of value when I help people solve their problems. My value doesn't come from solving their problems.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Cool.
And when we flip that around, the whole world opens up. The next kind of archetype is the connector. And relationships are everything to them. Heart to heart, face to face. They love to connect. They love and are really good at creating deep connections.
Yeah.
And when it comes to money, well, things will work out. If I just connect with enough people, and the money will come. No clue where it can come from, because they really have this very sort of blind trust.
Yes. If you do the right thing, right? You do the right thing, it'll come.
Exactly. You do the right thing and it will come. And like, where's your responsibility in all this? Well, it's karma. It'll come from the universe. Magically appear. What's interesting with these people, sometimes it does, which only reinforces it. But we want to take a look at that and simply say, but what if you felt more empowered and more confident with your money? You wouldn't have to rely on this money falling from the heaven.
Yeah.
They are good at connecting. They are so good at connecting. And they're such lovely people. But when it comes to themselves, what we can do is we can help them to develop the self-confidence around that. Yeah.
Cool.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think I am like that. I didn't even really think about that, but because I love my client, I've created boundaries, but I used to give away too much advice for free. I used to do and it was just because for them, it was for it. And it wasn't like as much of the one previous one, I can't remember the name of it, where you're doing it to give. It's more like because for the sake of the relationship, because I want to be able to, because it's the right thing to do. And now I've created boundaries about my fee structures where it's like, yes, and you will pay for this, right? But that took some time to develop those boundaries around that.
Yeah. Yeah. And to know that what you do is of value to people, and the biggest value that you bring is that you're excellent at connecting with them and
Right.
understanding them and really caring about them.
Exactly.
That's excludes you from doing your professional responsibility, which is
Exactly.
the money and saying, this is the fee structure. This is how we work together.
Mm-hmm.
And the connector will just simply say, well, I just love to connect so much that if the business is supposed to come to me, then it's meant to be, versus taking an active role and saying,
Yeah.
I really love this conversation with you. I would love to work with you. What do you hear the difference? They assume
Yep.
that things will happen versus stepping into the power and support.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. I've done a lot of self-development in that. I'm really good now, but I was not good before.
It's one of the patterns that you have that you've learned, and now you've sort of unlearned what you've learned and course corrected so that you don't give up your personality. You don't become this ogre. Channel it. You figure ways that you can use it to help you and your clients.
Yep. Totally.
Yeah. The last archetype is romantic, and the romantic really says, save. What's wrong with you? Life is meant to be enjoyed, and I'm going to enjoy it now. The savings thing, I don't know. I want to live life to the fullest. They spoil themselves. They spoil other people. And I say, this is romantic. They go shopping, they've had a bad day. They go shopping if they've had a good day. Buying things and living and spending their money that they have right now really fills a void for something else that's going on.
Yep.
Yeah, and so they end up carrying a lot of credit card debt. Why? Well, because it felt good in the moment.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
I went to the store and I was going to buy a carton of milk, and I came home with $200 worth of groceries. Why? Oh, because I needed this and I needed this, and so they live in the moment, and so that they can run up a lot of credit card debt, or spend foolishly, or spend money in a way that's not helpful for them.
Yeah, I know people like that.
Yeah, and so when we know that, we simply say, so what else can we do around that? I had a client that was a hopeless romantic, just hopeless. And she would say, I can't save money. I don't want to save money. And so instead of making a budget, we said to her, well, what if we this is just a slight slip, but what if we renamed it a spending plan? And this is what you get to spend on, and this is what you get to save for. And there was something very concrete in the planning. And so we knew that there was something that would bring her joy and experience. It was much easier. But you see, just those slight shifts make all the difference. Yeah,
definitely. I have a question from Sarah. She says, how do I identify what my money archetype is? Is there an assessment?
Whitney and I will work with you to do a money assessment. So it's an assessment, and then we do a debrief. So it's the assessment, and then we just sit down for an hour and talk through, what did you discover? And as you discover that, how can we use that as a rocket fuel to really help you reach your goals?
Yep. I'm actually right now going to put in your email, Mary. And I'm also going to put in mine just in case people need it.
Yeah. So I do this work individually with people, but now I do it in concert with a financial planner. And so, for example, Whitney's taken the assessments and I have to. We sort of know we know the archetypes, and as we know them, we can then help guide people to discover what may be true for them.
Yep. And I know you do classes and such. You offer classes to financial advisors clients, right?
Correct.
Okay. Yep. And Sarah has another question. She says, what is the first step I can take to change my money behavior?
The first step
is a really good question.
Yeah. So the first step is what we're doing exactly right now. Is you're looking at types and you say, well, what may be true for me? And then the second question that I would ask is simply say, what serves me or what gets in my way?
Yeah.
If something is getting in your way and we don't talk through it and address it, it's going to become a block. Yeah. And if it becomes a block, it's like, oh, well, Whitney, this is just the way that I am. I can't save.
Yeah.
And so when we notice what those are, then we talk through them and simply say, so let's look at where this came from. Where I have people, we work with people to write their money stories. Growing up, where do you hear that? One day, I remember this, one day I was sitting at a kitchen table, this is a while back, sitting at the kitchen table, cutting coupons because I was going to save 75 cents here and 75 cents there at the grocery store, right? My husband walked in and he goes, "Oh my God, you're just like your mother." And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And the truth of that is it, because my mom and I would, I grew up in a small farming community, would go to the big city, we'd go to St. Paul to go to the orthodontist. And we always, when we did the monthly appointments, would take a little trip to Dayton's. And on occasion, I would get a dress, which is fine. My mom would get a dress and she would simply say, "Well, this is kind of an expensive dress, but I really do need it to go out to dinner with your dad. We'll just save it. We'll just make up for it someplace else." And I thought, oh my God. Buying something that makes you feel good. Now, again, nothing wrong with it, right? But thinking is, well, I'll buy something now because it makes me feel good.
Yeah.
Figure out later how to pay for it.
That's so interesting, because I'm, starting money conversations with Zuri now, because she's starting to ask questions about, why. First, she says, "Does everything cost something?" It's a very interesting question. I said, well, it kind of depends. Things do. Your swimming lessons do. Going to the park indoors costs money, So she's just starting to realize that things cost money. She's at that age. And so.
She's 7, right?
Yeah, she's 7.
She's beginning to develop a concept of money. Before that,
exactly.
Money, I don't know, I'm clueless about money.
Exactly. And so one thing that I've, ever since we started going to the store together and going shopping together, and she asks for something, I don't say, because I know that I should not say, it's not good to say we don't have the money, because that's not true, right? So what I say is, well, if we buy this, then we can't buy this. We can't have it all. So we have to make choices with what we spend our money on, because there's not a limitless amount of money. So that's one thing that I talked to her about. But another thing that I think I might, now that we're talking about this working hard, the ruler. And so I was explaining to her, I have to work in order to earn money to pay the bills to live in this house, for example. And so she may, who knows, develop a pattern of, I need to work to earn money to live, which is good. I think develops a good work ethic, but depending upon how much I emphasize that, it could develop later on in her life about how we work hard. And I know she loves that I own my own business. So I'm thinking about my relationship even with Zuri and how we talk about money and how that could affect her in the future.
Yeah, and the words that you use. And the words that you use.
Exactly.
And what you're doing is you're drawing a link. I have my own business and I do work hard, and the money, and I work hard and I love the work that I do.
Yeah.
Helps do is pay for the house and pay for the life that we live. And that's the reality of life. Very simple. But but see, this is so interesting to me, because at 7, they're beginning to question.
Yes.
Money is just a concept. The money is just a concept.
Yes, totally.
How we use it. But and so it's interesting that she's beginning to question it. And so connecting the dots. Not in a mental way, but just a very practical way.
This is money. This is what it does for us.
Yeah.
June has a question. This is a good one. She says, how long does it typically take for one to begin better habits? Like an estimate of what have you seen over the years for people who are serious and driven to do better?
Once we know what the habits are, and once we know sort of the underlying emotions around it, we can begin immediately.
Yep. And go ahead.
And the thing about habits is that it's not about penalizing people, but it's a matter of developing habits that they can implement and repeat. It's not doing it once. It's the consistent pattern of doing it over and over and over.
Yeah. And I think, I read online, thing about new habits. It takes a few months for new habits to really set in, so that they're now a habit. It's habitual now versus a new thing that you have to really be intentional about doing.
And there's brain science behind it, just like there's brain science behind what about the archetypes and how they develop it.
Yeah.
It's the way that we think about things, and it does take time to rewire how we think about things. Do the actual behavior, see the results. Yeah. Begin to rinse and repeat and rinse and repeat.
That's right.
And it's that daily action of reminding myself that this is why I'm doing it and this is what it's in for me. Personal meaning to why I'm doing what I'm doing. If someone just said to me, make a budget.
Why?
Track your money.
Why? Yeah. Why?
When you do the work that you do with clients, you get to sort of the root cause of this is what it's going to be. This is what's in it for me. And when I know that, I can hang on to that.
Yep.
The other thing is when we do it consistently, we start developing a new identity. Like, I'm not a saver. Well, no, I used to not be a saver, but now I'm a person who can do X, Y, and Z. I've done it for 1 month. I've done it for 2 months. I've done it for 3 months.
Yeah.
It sort of becomes a pattern.
Part of who you are. Yeah. Healthy behavior. It's like grafting in healthy behavior. And that can take a lot of work. It's like, my pastor was talking about this on Sunday. He was talking about grafting in a tree, and putting in a new branch. Well, first you tie it there, it looks really awkward and it doesn't fit at all. But then the tree will start to grow together. That branch will start to grow together. But it takes a long time for that to start to grow together as a part of the new tree.
That's a beautiful metaphor.
Yeah.
And as that tree grafts, there's some days it doesn't do anything. And so the other piece of, identifying what it is that you want to change and figuring out how to do that. But the other thing is grace and forgiveness, because we're not perfect.
Right. That's right.
And that if we mess up one day or 1 week, you know what? Come Monday morning, let's push the reset button. No, and this is where lots of people get into trouble. Like, well, see, I tried it and it didn't work. I'm not going to do it anymore. They give up on themselves.
But instead of trying again, and not giving up.
The reality of it's going to happen.
Yeah.
We're not perfect. It's going to happen if I mess up.
Well, our habits, like you said, are ingrained from 7. So, to reverse or to try and change patterns that you have, that is incredibly challenging work. Anybody who has gone through any type of trying to change any behavior, it takes so much intentionality and saying no to what your default is, which is really hard to do.
Right. And it's that whole thing. And along with that, Whitney, I just want to add one point. And when we remind ourselves that we chose to do that, and there's a reason why we're doing that, and there's something in it for me.
Yeah. I think a good idea for people is if they're first, I think, so just to recap, like what the steps are, it's number 1, identifying what the behavior is. What is your predominant archetype? The second would be, once you identify what it is, identifying, how they work together, what are the negative, habits that you have as a result of that, and then creating new systems in place so that you can hijack, like what I say hijack the system, hijack your brain a little bit so that you can create new patterns and then stick with it. But when you're trying, that's where the real work comes in. Identifying is hard because you have to be vulnerable and you have to really be honest with yourself. That can be difficult work, but it's the fortune in the follow-up. And so the follow-up after the fact takes the longest time, right? And continuing to do these new things. But I think one thing, what you're getting at, and this is obviously a big part of my practice, is what's the end goal? Well, you're not going to run out of money in retirement. And here's exactly how that's going to work. Because if you save this little bit now, you're not going to run out of money, which is important to most people, right? So that would be just a driving example. But then another thing I'm thinking about, because you had said something that I really liked, is what's in it for me. I think if you can really write down, even every day, or say out loud, I am saving because it will make me feel this way. Whatever that core thing is for you, having that, saying it out loud or writing it so that you can meditate on what really it's going to do for you.
Yeah. And exactly. What's in it for me? And why is this important? So I may not retire for 30 years and looking down the road, why should I save this amount every month is a
right.
thing.
Yeah.
And what's important to me is that I know I can take care of myself.
Yes.
And it's a simple reminder. And what if you mess up? Well, then we just begin again. I think that's the critical piece, because people hold themselves, simply say, well, I'm going to change this and I'm going to do it I'm going to do it 100%. And I think that's unrealistic.
It's hard. No, yeah, it's just a little bit by bit.
Step by step by step.
Mm-hmm.
And I think,
Exactly.
Whitney, you got some ideas that you work with your clients. For example, if you're talking about savings, we start small and build big.
Exactly. That's right. That's right. I mean, and I was even talking with a gentleman about messaging for my business, and he said, what kind of one of the tag phrases that we said is, you don't have to be a millionaire to work with me, but I help you become a millionaire. Mm-hmm. So what are the small patterns that you can incorporate into your life so that you can build wealth in a sustainable way where you don't feel like you have to deprive yourself?
Right, because that is a sure success for failure, is when we deprive ourselves.
Yep. I think about that with healthy eating too. You still need to be able to eat your favorite foods.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a good metaphor. Healthy eating. Well, what if I do want that piece of chocolate cake? Well, you're not going to live on chocolate cake, so allow yourself to have that. Just don't do it every day.
Exactly. That's right. Exactly. And it's the same thing with money. I think about that a lot with money patterns and your healthy eating. It's like how people track their food. Well, you track your spending to make sure that you're spending wisely. Well, make sure you're eating wisely by tracking your food. It's the same concept.
Exactly. And as we continue doing that, and it becomes more of a pattern that we can kind of rely on, rather than that little 7-year-old simply saying, it's not important. Money's always been there.
Yeah.
It's about money. You don't have to know about money. It takes that identity and switches it all around and simply said, well, that could be true, and I could do nothing, and I would be the same spot that I am today. But what if, I love this question, what if that weren't true? And what if you could change that? What about that would you want to change? And what if you could? What would that look like? What would that feel like? What would that give you?
Yeah.
That whole emotional connection, the emotional connection that we make to the goal or to the change that we want to make. It's incredibly important in everything we do. Everything.
It opens the world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a beautiful question. And I think it's also an extremely empowering question. Mm-hmm. I love that. I'm going to use that.
Because you are, if you choose to be, you are an empowered person. You're the person running the show.
Yes,
you're running your money show. You're running your business show. You're running your life. You're running your life. And when we ask a different question, we open up our brains to get different answers. What would it be like? What would that give you? What would that give you? The people around you. How important is that?
That's really neat.
Yeah, and it begins us thinking in a whole different way.
Totally. And it's calming. It's like calming to think that way, I think.
It's not restrictive. It's not punitive. It's not threatening. It's not.
Yeah, I love that.
It does. When we have those kinds of conversations, when we have this kinds of information, we use it to empower ourselves. The result is the empowerment, but it starts with the awareness and understanding ourselves. And then it builds into, so what is possible, and then what am I willing to do? You know, a saying let me see if I have it here. It's by a philosopher. I wrote this in my book. Yeah, it's a philosopher, Jacob Needleman. If you don't know how you are with money, then you don't know yourself. Period. Because everything we do in life really revolves around some sort of money decision.
So true. That's so true.
And so we simply say, we can say, well, I don't like that. Well, that's not the point. The point is that's a fact. So how do we deal with that? How do we work with it?
Yeah.
We've got these little archetypes simply saying, oh, don't do this. I'll do this. I'll do this. Okay. So what are those what are those thought patterns that we have? And then once we know them, just like you said, once we know them, we unearth them. We simply say, so what works for you and what doesn't?
Yeah. And I think this is actually a great way to kind of round out, our talk today. But I think that's where it's important too, to work with me, a financial planner, to say, well, customize solutions to what your own goals are, your own values, and your own patterns. Because everybody is so different. And so that's why I shy away from everybody should save 15% and everybody should do this, this, and this. Well, it's different for everybody. So because we're all coming at this from not only different financial position, but a totally different life experience and values. So how do we customize a plan that fits you, your goals, and actually motivates you is really important.
That's the key. And I've done this work with you, and you're really good at it. You're really good at it because you have a deep understanding that it's more than the creation of the plan. The plan is the result of you taking the time and the energy to really get to know your clients at a deeper level. I mean, you could ask questions like, what are your goals? But that's irrelevant. But you take the time to get to know me first. And because you do that, all these things start tumbling out, and like they're really relevant to how it is you want to create what you want to create, co-create with your client.
Yeah,
so you
totally.
Just, okay, this is what the textbook says. I got a little information. So here's your plan. Here's what you need to do.
Exactly. It doesn't work. It doesn't work.
No. And I think that's where you really shine in terms of really wanting to and willing to and loving to really understand your clients.
Mm-hmm. It's true. Thank you. It's true, though. I do. I want to understand my clients. It's very true.
And the beautiful part of that is when you really understand me, guess what happens to me?
You feel seen. You feel valued.
I feel heard. I feel, oh my gosh, is this woman a financial planner? This is not what I think it is. And as a result, you become my partner.
Yeah, that's very true.
Helping me to manage the financial pieces. So when I get into trouble, or not even when I get into trouble, when I have a question or I don't understand something, or I just don't get it, I can easily come to you and say, or pick up the phone, or at your review meeting say, you know what, this doesn't work for me. Let's figure out something. You see how it's such a good take.
It's very
because
different.
You really are the trusted advisor.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I love that. And then just a couple comments here before we leave.
Sure.
Chris says, this is great value in finding underlying emotion that's driving your spending or saving habits. Totally. It makes such a difference to know your why. And then Chris jokes about with the chocolate cake. She says, or you end up eating the whole cake, right? Because
that's good.
You're surprising yourself.
You know what? You might. And what happens if you eat a whole cake? Probably aren't going to have cake for a while.
Yeah, it's true. Well, Mary, it was such a pleasure. I really appreciate your taking the time to join me today. It was a blast.
It's my pleasure, Whitney. If there's any way that I can be of service, I'm a resource to your clients, and we're partners in helping women really become women and men, people really feeling empowered with their money rather than let their money show run them.
Yep, that's absolutely right. I agree. And again, I appreciate you. I put your email into the comments, and then I also, of course, mine. And then if you have any interest, if you're viewed today and you're not already working with me, just let me know if you want to have this conversation in a deeper level. And then I'm also going to be sending this to my clients to view so that they can kind of mull it over and they can see maybe what they want to talk about with me. So again, thank you, Mary.
Awesome. I'm hoping it'll spur some questions.
That's exactly. Yes. Thoughtful questions, right?
Thoughtful questions for a superb advisor who really cares.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Whitney. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.